want to be the dominant voice that butts in.
You're not the dominant voice that butts in.
Okay.
That's Kate. Shit.
Oh my God, Kate, do you want some red wine?
No, I'm fine,
Are
thank
you
you.
sure?
I'm fine.
Because you're all out on your Moscato.
I'm all right.
You're going to need some
No,
when you hear some of the grotesque things in this.
Oh,
Stop
is this
saying-
great test?
Nah, not really. Only because I'm not very good at describing that sort of stuff. It is, but like I'm going to dance around that a little bit.
No, don't dance around it. I like to
I'll
hear the
explain.
grotesque.
I'll explain it as best I can. It gets a bit sciencey.
Sciencey.
Yeah.
Okay. You're going to lose Kate straight away.
yep, I'm already
No,
asleep.
it straight up lost me. So no, the episode is not going
Oh
to
my
get
God,
sciencey.
if it loses you, then we're fucked.
Fucked. Team fucks.
Team fucked. Can't wait for my t-shirt.
Anyway, how cool's my fucking theme music? I got theme music.
We like your theme
I
music.
really like it. No, it fully does remind me of like Stranger Things 80s theme. It's great. I enjoy it.
Stranger Things, eh?
Stranger Things is
Stranger
awesome.
Things.
I feel like it's 9 Inch Nails meets a horror movie from the 80s.
I feel it's 9 Inch Nails meets Stranger Things.
All right. Well, I mean, the Stranger Things is going for the horror
I like
80s
it.
theme. Yeah, no, it's not bad. We should
I
all
love
have
it.
our own theme music, I think.
I would like mine. Oh, so who gets the original?
So Kate's is bam.
Is that it?
I'm joking.
That's all I get.
Kate,
Hey,
just welcome.
your last episode was amazing. I'm hating
Oh,
having
thank you.
having to
Kate
follow up
needs
from
a
that.
mix of Justin Bieber, Justin Timberlake, Backstreet Boys.
Hey, so I've got to write this music, and I can only write music. So
Oh.
I struggle to write vomit. I'm not familiar with
Oh, you
that
just
key.
lost about
Yeah.
90%.
Don't need
of
to struggle
fans.
to write it. It's spelled VOMIT.
Oh my god! So like this episode, just so everyone knows, is going to be messy as hell.
Oh,
like,
we began.
I'm
Shit.
yeah. What do you think this has been? We've been talking,
God.
Like,
Talking
we're
'cause we like each other.
Talking into the mics, like when we're having a normal conversation, it's like, hang on, just let me grab the mic.
Okay, I'm good.
Like, pull up the mics at breakfast.
I'm just going to drink me coffee.
No,
Shut
but
up.
I enjoy researching, but this one's really there's so much to it that I would have had to take a long time, and I'm lazy, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, it should be interesting enough. So, the Black Plague.
Ooh.
That's right. So, there has been 3 major epidemics of the Black Plague. But the one most people are familiar with took place in the late 1340s. So, and that one killed. When I was doing the research, and watching all the documentaries and shit, there was no number on how many people got killed. But then I've just found this little graph here before, and it tells me. So they reckon in the Black Death Plague of 1347 to 1351, over 200 million people died. Which that's like fucking full on numbers.
Wow.
Like when you
Wow.
know, population differences.
So
and
people
stuff.
like literally
That's the
dropping
world.
dead in the street then.
Yeah, that were like in lots of provinces there was 80%.
No
death
hand
rate.
sanitizer
Is-
in 13...
But isn't
wait,
this-
1400s? 1400s?
14th century.
14th
It's the
century.
1300s.
That's what
14th
I
century.
mean.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
Isn't this where the Ring a Ring a Rosie song come from? The Black Plague?
Yes, it is, Kate. So that one's
Where
super...
all the children drop
So-
All
dead.
fall down.
Okay,
Yeah.
so like you're making me jump ahead, but I'm totally gonna
Oh,
here.
my
So
apologies.
now, the reason why it's still called the Black Death, right, is because they don't actually know 100% what it came from. Okay, so most people think it's the bubonic plague and then also another variation of the pneumonic plague. So, but lots of scientists vigorously disagree with this just because of the speed in which this fucker travelled. Like it killed half the world
Vigorously.
in whatever I said.
Quicker than Corona?
Oh man, it killed half the world in 4 years.
Wow. But then again, back then,
They
they,
didn't
wouldn't have
have-
known anything about germs and how they spread.
No.
Well, this
no
was a
vaccines.
different, and I'll get into that. It's actually quite surprising some of the measures they took.
Oh, really?
They'll-
They took measures?
Yeah, not all good ones, but yeah, they did do a lot of the same things that we're doing right
Oh,
now.
interesting.
Amid all of this,
Okay.
but they didn't. You got to remember, they didn't have planes and trains and fucking cars and stuff to transport stuff. So illness included around the world
Yeah.
that quickly
Yeah.
back then. So for a disease to get around the world like that,
Yeah.
How did it happen?
fucking full on.
Wow.
So there's
Okay.
still conjecture around whether that happened. But for the so assuming it's the reason why they think it is the bubonic plague, all right? So the symptoms of getting the bubonic plague is it starts off as like a cold and sort of like a really bad flu, similar to what you see with Ebola and COVID-19. And then from there, you get these gross, like little welts on your armpits. They're called bubas. And they're very, very badly swollen lymph nodes. And they go under your armpits and around your groin area and in your neck. And
Because
these-
that's where your lymph
Wow.
nodes are.
yeah, these
Yeah.
things they can swell up to the size of an orange.
Wow.
And then it turns black. So that's why they
Hence the
think
black plague. Yep.
Oh my
and
God.
so there's another variation of the plague, this type of plague called the pneumonic plague, which is pretty much the same thing, but this gets into your lungs.
Ooh.
Or like
So-
pneumonia, pneumonic
and
plague.
COVID.
Yeah, yeah. So and this is where it can get transferred via air. So people
Wow.
sneezing and stuff. So
Okay.
Yep.
So,
So the-
bubonic plague, how does that transfer?
through
Germs?
you're making me jump ahead. I will get into all
Okay,
this,
I'll
but
be
it's
fine.
through cockroaches. Not cockroaches, fleas. Fleas.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Wow.
Wow.
The pneumonic plague, that's where the Ring a Ring the Rosies song
Come
comes
from.
from. So A Pocket Full of Posies was there's so much to go into this.
But oh no, I'm really interested
So-
because I've known that that's about a plague,
Okay,
but I didn't
all
know
right.
what a pocket full of posies meant.
I'll give you more context once we've gone
Reached
through
that
it,
point.
Okay, remind me to go back to Ring a Ring the Rosies. Okay.
A pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes.
You see, that's the corn
yeah,
version.
ashes,
No.
ashes.
Oh, yeah.
Or
No.
is it a
It's
tissue?
a
No,
tissue,
it is
a
a
tissue, a
tissue.
tissue.
When I grew up, it was a tissue,
the
but I've
kids
heard
now
people
say ashes,
yeah.
ashes. Yeah.
I'm sure that's just because of the corn song.
Ashes, ashes,
I'm sure of it. Like
ashes, ashes,
it
a
is
tissue, a tissue.
A tissue, a tissue
That's
makes more
referring,
sense.
So it, like you've already got context to this. So a tissue refers to them sneezing.
Yep.
And them getting the pneumonic plague and
And
then them
dying.
falling down.
And falling
Dead.
down and dying. It's
Yeah.
horrific, and we let our children sing
Hey,
it.
all
Yeah.
nursery rhymes, if you really think about them. Like
horrific.
Rockabye Baby.
Well, I mean, the Brothers
Oh,
Grimm,
yeah,
right?
that one terrifies me. I
Rockabye
hate that
Baby
one.
is messed up.
Okay, so because just the way our society is built up, as with most things, if you speak to people in the East, the Black Plague started well before 1347, which is when it actually arrived in Europe. So in 1332, in Asia, this is when the Mongols ruled the fucking world. Like
Oh, wow.
they
Yep.
had like they were like huge empire, bigger than the Roman Empire. I think it's the biggest empire that's ever roamed the earth. Like I think they owned more than anyone else. It was fucking massive. And these guys are the ones, like they did a lot of bad shit, but they also opened up trade routes between Asia and
Other countries.
going into Europe and like through Sicily and Italy and then going up all through Europe and yeah. So they're one of the big creators of like our modern world in the
Export
trade.
situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but in around 1332, while they were about 150 years into their like serious dominant reign, they started noticing a disease that was taking out many of their warriors. And it turned out this was the plague. So they're the first actual signs that I'm sure there actually probably is more before that, but from what I've seen, it's around 1332, 1333, where they start noticing it within the Mongolian army, and then they're traveling all through Asia, and it's starting to wipe out Asia. Like it goes through China, it goes, yeah.
Well, yeah, it's
Just
amazing.
wiping them
And
out.
actually, one of the some of the it could be myth, like it might not be true, but potentially the first case of germ warfare between nations was during this time when a group of invading Mongols were in a city in Europe. I don't remember the one. I probably should have written that down, but I didn't. In a city in Europe, invading them, and they had to actually stop off call the siege to a halt because the plague was like just fucking killing out all their army. But before they left, they fucking got all their victims of the plague and put them on catapults and fucking fired.
No, they didn't.
Yeah. So
Is that because they knew that they would infect, or is that
Yeah.
because they
Yeah.
just thought,
Yeah.
well, you're going to die
Well, either
anyway,
either. Yeah,
so
so-
let's just use you as catapult
Oh my
fodder?
God.
there's a chance that was
Wow.
actually the introduction of the whole thing, but probably,
Holy
probably
shit. Oh my
not.
God.
Probably
If
not.
you did that because
my
you knew
God.
that the bodies would infect other people, that is some fucked up shit.
Oh, yeah. No, it's fucking nasty.
I'm
but-
totally telling that version because I think that's
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
I'm gonna
people
go
being
with that
catapulted
because
to infect
that's-
other people. That's fabulous.
That's the most fucked.
It's brutal,
That's
eh?
fabulous.
But anyway, regardless of that, so these guys they went through places and they fucking took it over, right? So they know this disease is spreading through them, and like most people of the time, they weren't actually sure what it was. They didn't know whether it was something in the air or whether it was something like cause of evil. But anyway, they didn't know what it was, so they were getting to fuck from town to town, pillaging and raping the town, and then they'd just fucking burn the town out in attempt to not actually spread the disease. But the fucking disease was being transported with them through all the different food and stuff that they were taking for trade. So you had all these fleas on the back of rats.
Oh,
So-
far
Yeah,
out.
because rats were just, common companions in travel, weren't they?
Yeah.
Everywhere. Yeah.
So at this point, it is moving at a relatively slow pace through Asia, but it's taking them out. Like it's taking
Very
out large
quickly.
numbers. No, not heaps quickly, but as it spreads through it, it's it's making its toll. Right. So it's 1347, and the plague has just hit Sicily, and it starts at pretty rapid pace. It starts going through places like Italy, Switzerland, Germany. All right, and it's taking out crazy large numbers. And to begin with, most people are considering it because their relationship with God was based on punishment, basically back in those times. So
So you got what you deserve.
there was a large belief that this was either a punishment from God or another one was, which is very common. You might have heard of miasmas.
No.
Okay,
I've
so
heard the word.
these were believed to be evil vapors that were in the air, and these miasmas are what they believed
Miasma.
to cause the
Sickness.
the sickness.
Okay.
So they believe purifying the air.
So like their version of germs.
Kinda, yeah, but it's considered like it's a vapor, like that. Just they can't.
Yeah.
Like, they can't
when
wash their hands and it's gone.
So when
They don't
people
see it
cough
like
on
that.
each other and stuff now, and we know that
Yeah.
that spreads germs, this was their version of that.
I'll get
Yeah.
the planets wrong, but they believed it was like an evil spirit thing that aligned from Saturn and Jupiter and another one, and like fucking proper medieval shit.
And probably
But-
something to do with the Mayan calendar because everything refers back to the Mayan calendar.
But in reality, it was germs.
So, well, yes, and yeah, it was germs, but it was fleas.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
So when fleas are carrying this plague, how are they carrying it? Is it they're infected with germs, or is it how
yeah,
does
so
that
it
work?
only like that's where it gets sciencey, and there's all these big fucking words that I'm not gonna. I'm not even gonna try.
Don't scare me with the big words.
It's like some crazy weird shit that goes on inside the flea, but it just takes one fucking.
And
Right,
so it's the
and for-
bite.
Sorry, and for
It's
this
the bite of
disease,
the flea?
Yeah, one bite. Can
So
give
there's
it to you.
something in
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
flea's system
Yeah.
that transfers
And
through
so
bite.
the flea needs a specific environment
Yeah.
to get this
Warmth
to be
and
disgusting
moisture.
filth.
Moisture,
filth.
like normal
So no, it's
things
filth.
that spread.
So that
Oh.
yeah. So
Okay,
you
great.
picture Europe and you know,
You've made me so itchy that, like, please get through the
So, but I
flea
mean, we're,
section.
so we're at places where there's fucking garbage all over the street. They didn't have sewage systems at the time, so like it's
It was
fucking
filth.
disgusting.
Yeah.
There's rats everywhere.
There's always rats everywhere back then.
Yeah, exactly. And on these rats are the fleas. People
Yeah.
and people just get a bite from this flea and then they're fucked.
Oh.
Fuck.
So it's fucking brutal. No one knows where it's coming from. And yeah, so they're blaming these miasmas, right? So to get rid of the miasmas, lots of people believe you've got to purify the air. So this is where the posies come in from the song.
Oh,
It's the
okay.
smell.
Oh,
Pocket
so
full of-
because
Pocket
the
full of posies.
air smells
Purifying
like
it.
Yeah.
posies,
Yeah.
then the air must be fresh.
Yes.
Ah,
Wow.
So, yeah.
We all know
smart
that doesn't work.
thinking.
So there were a few.
Or does it?
Now
So you fill your pockets with posies and you'll be all right.
well, that was one of the beliefs. Some of the fucking I'll get to some of the more crazy stuff that stemmed from
wow,
this
really?
that people believed.
Okay.
But there wasn't any symptoms found, right? But there was lots of well-known physicians that were prescribing some fucking weird shit. Like the head physician of the University of Paraguay.
Is this still the 14th
Well, that was a good one.
century?
Yes.
So this is all where we're
14th
at right
century.
now is 1347.
Okay.
Okay,
so
but
we're
this all
trusting
takes-
physicians in the 14th
Well,
century.
they did.
Okay.
So he believed that it generated in a bad material, that a poison that basically generated inside your heart.
What?
And he believed in gum resin and white lilies.
Gun
and-
resin.
Yes. And then he would also
Okay.
give them blood and other human waste and wipe it over the fucking over the pubes and
Oh, and to
you know,
just
do
He
all
was
make
a
this sort of
fucking
weird
weirdo.
shit.
So
He could have been on
basically-
Team Fucked.
Basically, cause bubas to become infected.
Well, he could very well have. Now,
Did he also put leeches on them and bleed them?
yeah, so bloodletting was another really common
Yeah.
belief in purifying it. The Pope at the time.
Because we can always
old
trust the Pope.
Yeah.
So-
Next, we'll be asking all the Catholic priests for their advice.
Well, he declared it that he started off by declaring that only extreme religious practice can help with this, right?
Okay.
Of course.
Of course. And I mean, it ends up getting that fucking bad that he has to fucking purify, like, I don't know the word. So anyway, he made it so people could start dumping their bodies in the rivers because
Oh no!
The
That's
Pope
like the
did.
worst
Yeah.
possible thing you
Oh,
could do with
wow.
a body.
there was nowhere to fucking bury him.
Wow.
Oh my god!
So they're-
So instead of burning them, perhaps let's just
Or
tip them in the water that we're going to
burying them
bathe and drink.
far away
Yeah.
from a
Yeah.
drinking
So, yeah.
system. Of,
Pretty charming,
oh
hey?
my god!
But like the amount of fucking death, like I'll get more to just how it.
that's like if you wanted to know the way to make that plague spread as fast as possible, chuck a rotting corpse contaminated with the plague into the river water that people drink from. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but even for the 14th century, that is fucking dumb.
So yeah, I mean, look, it was different times.
I mean, I know people used to piss in those streams, they'd wash themselves, they'd set up latrines nearby, but it's like you're drinking from this water, mate.
yeah, yeah.
That is going into
I mean,
your
and
body.
that ended
is
up
fucked.
becoming another huge issue. Was things like famine and disease were killing people on top of the plague as well. Like, and I mean, I'm not
It's
surprised.
not a
it's
good
gone
time
that
to
way.
be alive.
But
No.
I mean, the Pope himself, he ended up hiring a pretty well known doctor for the time. I'm definitely going to get this one wrong. Also, Dr. Guy de Chauliac. I don't know.
How you spell it?
I spelt it how I would pronounce it, and I still
Oh,
pronounce
very
it
good.
wrong. Anyway, he was,
Geeta. We'll just call him Geet.
he was the person. Many as you can perhaps imagine, lots of the clergy and all the leaders. So, at the time, the way society would obviously you had your king. It was King Edward at the I can't remember his number. Maybe the second at the time.
There's a few.
There's been some of them. You had them, and then you had like lords of manors, and then you had the clergy. Like these motherfuckers ruled. And anyway, so lots of the clergy left, just fucking bailed like the main cities and fled
I'm
to
done.
their
See you later.
fled to their little rich parts of the country, and just left people to suffer.
No
But then-
doubt secluded and their water system wasn't infested
was
with
perfect.
fake-filled bodies.
But in the clergy that stayed behind, fucking large numbers were killed, like massively large numbers. So there were,
Yep.
But anyway, the Pope's own doctor, he was one of the ones to stay behind, and he recommended to the Pope himself isolation,
I say.
bloodletting,
Meh.
and then to purify the air with fire. So
Fire.
What the fuck?
So the
I'm
Pope-
just
It's
gonna
gonna
put you in this
kill.
room, set it on fire,
fucking
and you'll be
straight
right.
up,
The fire
straight up.
will-
So the Pope,
Oh, really?
The Pope took his advice and went into isolation and did all the bloodletting, like extremely painful shit. And he had flames. I don't know if whether like I've heard a couple of different descriptions of how these flames were there, but like just on a log fire next to his ears at all fucking times, like burning super fucking hot.
Oh my
And
god!
the Pope went through. The Pope didn't get it, but
wow.
but he was in
I
isolation,
put
He
that
was in
down
ice-
to the
yeah.
ice.
covered in
Yeah.
fucking fire.
Not
Hey man,
flames.
fire would keep rats away.
Nobody,
Very true.
nobody experiencing
I've got
isolation
another-
during COVID-19 should subject themselves to flame.
A bit later on in this, I've got another interesting story about fire in all of this. But anyway, I'll get back to that. So the Pope's doctor himself was too busy treating people. So he actually ended up getting the virus.
Yep.
And he treated him. Everyone abandoned him, as they did. And he ended up treating himself and surviving, which is fucking... He's one of the
He
rare...
treated himself.
Yeah,
Isolation
so
or
with
fire?
weird shit.
Isolation
Yeah,
or
with that shit. Exactly that. So, but anyway, at this point, right, so the beginning, people were turning to the religious leaders and asking, why is God blaming us, etc.
Yep.
And then they're seeing not only their religious leaders flee, but they're seeing them get these fucking diseases and dying themselves. So people are seriously starting to question...
Shake their face.
Yeah, well, definitely in the church.
Okay.
So, and from this, a lot of fucking blame starts being laid. Like,
So now you've got angry, sick
Yeah.
You've
people.
got people dying, like people are losing their children,
Yeah.
people are losing their like idols of faith. Like, yeah, that's bound to happen.
so this is when people. So in Italy, for example, they reckon that it just got like fucking rough as guts. Like people were they thought it was the end of the world, basically. Like the amount of death that was just spreading through everywhere. They were like, fuck it, you know, God's abandoning us. And they seriously started living each day like it was their last. And fucking, it was like just basic debauchery everywhere. And, you know, this shit didn't help for the spread of the fucking thing either.
Yeah, I know, but what was? So, you know,
So there was a
go
famous...
hard.
There was a famous
Well, if you're gonna die, die happy. I mean, like, don't go hurting anyone else. But you know, if you think, well, I'm gonna die anyway, I'm gonna spend my last days in a brothel. Go for your life. Edit that out.
Can I just interrupt? Sorry, before this flies from my head. Isn't it odd that, so where are we, 1347?
yes.
And Italy is starting
Yeah.
to be wiped
And
out.
where did it come from? China.
And here, and what's happened here?
Yeah, exactly.
We've come from
Yeah.
China, and Italy
Italy's fucked.
is being destroyed.
Yeah. But this is because of trade routes.
This is trade
if you
routes.
look at how it goes, it's pretty clear
So
to see
trade
why.
from China is always like.
Well, they're going into Europe, and their point of entry from Europe is in through Sicily and Italy,
Yeah.
and then up.
Okay, yep. So that's why
fair
it's there. Yep.
Yep. So during this time in Italy, another name I'm going to pronounce. Every name
Butcher.
that I'm going to say, I'm going to fuck up. So I
Yeah.
apologize to people that like are good at pronouncing shit. But
People from Italy, maybe.
there was a well-renowned author of the time called Giovanni Boccaccio.
Well
And
done.
he wrote, "Such terror struck into the hearts of man and woman by this calamity. The brother abandoned the brother, and the uncle his nephew, and the sister her brother, and very often the wife her husband. But what was even worse and quite incredible was that fathers and mothers refused to see and tend to their sick children as if they had not been theirs."
Oh,
So this
that's
was
horrible.
so yeah, and families ended up just basically like not in every case, okay, but lots of families just if you got sick, you were fucking
done.
left, and
God.
they wouldn't help, they wouldn't acknowledge because they just didn't want to get it, and it
Oh,
it got
that's
to
so
the
sad.
point where anyone that had the disease, right, people were that afraid of them that you were locked up, you were put in isolation. In 1655, you were put in isolation for 40 days. I'm not sure if they had an amount of time in 1347.
You see that
But-
throughout centuries in throughout history. Whenever someone caught something, like whether it was the measles or whatever, like if you were on a ship and you came up with red spots, they would just chuck you overboard.
Oh my god.
That's just the way, and it was totally acceptable.
Well,
because
ships
it was
are like
kill
petri
one.
dishes for
Yeah, they
disease.
are.
Yeah, they were smart. They may not have known about germs, but they knew that if you didn't cut the infection out,
It was going
then
to continue.
everyone would get it.
Yeah,
so it was
absolutely.
like, yeah, you would abandon the sick to save the healthy. Like, as horrible as that is, and none of us would probably, like, even if my child was deathly sick, I would never abandon them. But that's what you did to survive back then. They would do that. They would just say, okay, you're ill, you're done for, we got to save who's healthy.
So
Far out.
anyone that got sick ended up being forced into quarantine with their whole family. So it didn't matter if you didn't have it, you were forced
You were all
into
together.
and then so you're getting entire families dying. Like there's
Wow.
really sad written reports of so this is a 1655 story actually from the second plague. Yeah, the second plague that occurred. Which was quite well documented in parts of London. There was in a street there's a family that had died. Well, no, they were dying. They all had the plague, and there was these people that would go from door to door. So in 1655, every house that was in quarantine had a red cross put on their door, and that's how you knew,
Stay away.
Stay
Yeah.
the fuck away from that. Yeah.
So, but there was people that would go around and give these people food. Sometimes, the lucky ones, all right? So this street
Oh,
that was
that's
well
horrible.
documented was like a middle class street. It wasn't.
Yeah.
The
You
peasants
can
were
imagine the
fucked.
people that were just left to
So
die.
especially in the later ones, rich people fled.
Yep.
Middle people just sort of were pretty fucked, and the peasants were
We're
just
fucked.
destroyed, like totally
Oh,
destroyed.
it's horrible.
So, there's a story of the people in the street. These women would come and they'd drop off food to all the people that were sick in the households, and this would have happened millions of times. But reading a direct account from it like sort of brings it home. And one night they arrived at the house, and they found the mother dead, and they looked around and the son was next to her, like this like he was like 3 or 4, and he had it too and was just sitting there and fucked, and they just had to close the door.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
So
no,
yeah,
no,
just
no.
horrible,
No.
like that
No,
sort
I
of
couldn't do
shit
it.
went
That's
on.
terrible.
Couldn't do
Yeah.
it. I couldn't do it. I don't know what I would do, but I could
Yeah,
not
well,
do
there's not
that.
much you can do, is they take them out and kill another fucking
I know,
100,000
but like,
kids.
come on. At the end of the day, like, even as horrific and fucked up as this sounds, I would rather, I don't know, drug a child, smother a child.
Yeah, then let them
just
suffer.
leave them there to suffer alone and scared and cold and sick. Like,
Here is
no.
that sick, twisted
I know,
part of you
I know
coming out
that,
again.
like you'd have to touch them to do that, and that's probably why they didn't do that, because you're risking
Getting infected
catching it
yourself.
just by putting that child out of its misery.
I agree, though.
But in a time like that, I know people would have to be a lot harder than they are now, but that is just
That
that
poor
makes my
child.
heart hurt.
Yeah.
That's horrible. I could, no.
No, it's horrible. And so, I mean, and this is widespread devastation. This isn't limited to any area. It's fucking everywhere. So we're moving into around 13. So 1347, it's hit Italy, Switzerland, Germany. It's fucking ravished, destroyed places like Venice and Florence. Like up to 80% of that population's dead.
That's so many people.
It's fucking insane, isn't it?
So many
sad.
people.
And then anyway, it hits.
So many children.
Yeah. So come 1348 is when it hits France, and then from there it goes on through the English countryside, and so in 1348 the majority of English, all the crops and stuff, like 90% of their income and where they were at was based in rural areas. So
Like farmland.
yeah, and it just fucking pillaged through these areas first. So it was poor people that well, actually, interesting enough, the poor people copped it first, but then the surviving members of all these, there was that many fucking houses abandoned or like dead people. Like I think it was Venice, there was like 7,000 abandoned houses. Like there's just, so the surviving people that were peasants, fucking, if they had all these family members die, they ended up getting like crazy amounts of property and fucking wealth.
Okay.
And so it's, that's just one aspect of it, but basically it fucked them up. And this led to like a massive shortage of labor and all sorts of fucking problems. Their harvests weren't being what's the word?
Maintained.
Sowed. Yeah. So and they're
Sowing and
Yeah.
then harvesting.
and then their live crops were just being fucking not live crops, live stocks were just being left.
livestock, yeah.
So yeah, so that's when famine really started to come into play.
Well,
and
yeah, because even the rich depend on the poor and the working society for livestock and crops. They're not exactly just gonna find that
Make
fucking
their
shit on
own.
their own.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So people are seriously starting just to think this is the end of the fucking world. And like, if you look at what Armageddon is, I mean, that fucking was like that many people died.
Oh yeah, if that shit
yeah.
was happening right now, people would be praying to Jesus all over the place
Absolutely.
because you'd be like, "This is the rapture. We're all fucked."
We're fucked.
So,
Like what we've got going on right now, it's like stay home and watch Netflix, dude. Just chill.
there's lots of fucked up tales from this sort of stuff, but two of the worst ones that have come from people's beliefs around what's caused it. So you're heavily religious and the church has failed you, and you start thinking, well, I'm not a bad person, but we're all being punished. So fucking, you start judging other
Others.
people. Well, not everyone, but lots of people do this.
Well,
and
people look to a reason as to why they're suffering such horrific
Anyway.
things.
So I'm not 100% sure what year this one started. Actually, these next two, I'm not 100% sure on the years, but it's between 1347 and 1351. The Jews were fucking blamed.
Oh, really?
So they were considered like the most offensive people to God.
Why? What? Because they
that's-
didn't
that's
believe in
another podcast.
Jesus.
Yeah, well, yeah, basically. They
Basically.
weren't Christian followers, were they?
Oh well, I guess anyone that wasn't a Christian
yeah.
was
but
particularly Jews.
So the other part is like, I mean,
All
the Islamic
wankers.
faith was obviously cranking at that time, but that when it was the 1330s and it was spreading through Asia, it went through all of the Islamic world as well. So they were being fucking devastated by this shit. But that wasn't so much of an issue to people in Europe. They were blaming the Jews.
yeah,
So
times of crisis, people always look for people to blame.
Yeah.
as they seems to be the method for the time, they believed in purifying these motherfuckers. So they
no.
burnt them.
Oh,
No,
fuck.
they didn't.
And there's lots of stories of just entire villages.
How do I not know this? I mean, the Jews went through
Yeah.
enough,
Yeah.
but Jesus Christ.
So they would come in and just every fucking Jew would be found and they'd have mass burnings in the mornings. And they'd just
shit.
burn hundreds of fucking Jews at the stake. Thousands and thousands and thousands of families just fucking burnt, killed,
shit.
massacred. So yeah, just disgusting behaviour. So the other interesting group of individuals that emerged from this that basically became sort of like the fucking rock stars of the time were called, they probably won't pronounce like this, but they were called the Flagellants, not to be confused with flatulence.
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 Fucking flatulence.
Flatulence.
So
Kate's very well known with the flatulence.
these guys were really opposed to the church. They were fundamentalist Christians, like really full-on Christians, and they were believing the church wasn't giving the right guidance. So these fucking cunts were like trying to get, what's the word called? I wrote it down because I knew I would forget this word. Penitence? Penitence. So,
Don't you remember that just from Indiana Jones?
Never
The
watched him.
penitent man will pass.
yeah, I do know the word.
Penitent man will
Yeah.
pass.
But anyway, so they basically believed you had to suffer like Christ did to get rid of this thing. So they went on like walking from fucking town to town, just committing like acts of like full on self mutilation and like.
Oh my god.
Christ.
Anyway, there was Robert of Avesbury wrote about them when they went through his town. So each wore a hood painted with a red cross front and back and carried a whip with 3 thongs. Full fucking stop.
Now breathe. Continue.
Each thong had a knot in it with something sharp like a needle sticking through it. They walked around and sung a Christian litany. I don't know what the fuck that is either. And one after the other, they struck themselves with these whips.
Oh,
So they
I've
had
seen that
yeah,
before
so they had
in
whips with sharp
many a
shit.
movie.
But these guys were drawing massive fucking crowds.
I've
when
seen
they
that.
were-
So
So
like
they
it's
were
like a
whipping
whip.
themselves.
Yeah, like on the back,
Yeah,
so they were
that-
like covered
it's-
in
yeah,
blood.
so they would like be naked and whip themselves, like fling it over their shoulder, hit their back, until their back was like just covered, like red raw with whip marks. That's and it was a penitence. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
I've seen it in movies. I know what I'm talking about.
So all of this was just basically taking away from the power of the church and the power of authority. It really led to a big change in the way England and other parts of Europe operated and like moved forward into the future. But it was also during this time, going back to them blaming the Jews, I can't actually leave this one out. One of the ways they thought the Jews were doing this were they were poisoning the water wells. So there's a few court cases on file where
Oh, wow.
so they would capture the Jews and then bring them in and then torture the shit out of them and then get false confessions out of them. And
Because they just wanted the torture to end.
So they were basically saying to the people, they've confessed to poisoning the water wells and stuff.
But when they're poisoning their own waters, oh no, this is a different plague, sorry.
Yeah, and plus they probably think, they're magical fucking believers. Like they probably thought, they've got a remedy to it. Anyway, whatever they thought, it was a justification to the people. So the people probably didn't think like mass burnings were that bad. But obviously, it's they are, and it didn't stop anything. No one was avoided. None of these things that they were doing slowed down the plague. Obviously, they still were getting it in crazy fucking numbers, and it was just absolutely devastating everywhere. Right, so fields, farms, villages, and everything, every area of every part of Europe, there was areas being abandoned or just fucking completely wiped out and rid of people. This was obviously leading to like a severe lack in labour and a massive demand for people. So come 1351, when the plague was starting to die out, this is when we start seeing a bit of a change in the atmosphere in the way people were treating peasants. Obviously, this wasn't the end of peasants and it went on for a long time, but it was the start of it. And because so many people had died and there was such a lack of it, peasants were now in demand for their labour. So people were offering them 4 times the wage of what they were previously receiving. And
get everything back up.
so they started getting a little bit more say and owning, because they had relatives or masters that had died, they were starting to own a bit of land. The church's authority over it all was starting to loosen, but only very, very slightly. They had a big grasp over everyone for a long time. Their power was immense and total. But the labour demand got that bad and the rich fucking totally opposed it. And a bunch of clergymen and fucking rich bloody lords and manor owners and all sorts of other tossers came forth and spoke to King Edward. I really should have written down what number he was. But they had a big whinge about this. So in 1349, sorry, I've jumped, I thought it was 1351, but it wasn't. 1349, he said that all wages should be matched to what they were in 1346, which is fucking nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah.
So you've gone from nothing to nothing.
Yeah. So around this time, the plague basically just started to die out. It wasn't there was no, we found a cure, everyone's quarantining. It just sort of
left.
It didn't just leave though. So every 10 years it seems to come back. But the people kind of almost got used to the just like immense amounts of death that was around them. And this is when you see like lots of art and different literature of the time start to turn really dark and macabre. Like you'll see lots of like fucking pretty nuts out paintings from that time.
That's what they were living.
This is their way of processing through it. And it took them 100, 200 years for them to recover from this.
200 years.
They lost that much of their population. 50%
Wow.
of Europe was completely wiped out.
Oh my God, when you consider the fact that we might have to be in isolation for like 6 months, and that's scary enough. And we're not even like dropping like flies.
Like
Wow,
they are.
that's just puts in perspective what we're going through right now, doesn't it?
Well, absolutely. And as I said, that plague killed 200 million people.
Wow.
And then every decade after that, there was more people. I didn't get the stats on how many people were killed on those decades. But in the year 18... okay, this one's an interesting one. So I've got a little chart in front of me telling me about deaths of the plague. So there's been 3 major plagues, right? obviously the first one was the one of 1347 to 1351 with 200 million people. Another one took place that went from 1817 to 1923.
Oh my God.
That killed 600,000 people, so that's
Wow.
a bit less. All right. In 1655, there was another fucking massive one that killed a couple of million people. I watched a documentary on this one, the 1655 one, and in London alone, over the space of like 3 months, 100,000 people died. And this was when quarantine. There's some interesting ones in this 1655 one because quarantine was huge in this one. They all were like fucking stayed inside. The rich would left London. There's a few people that stayed, like the equivalent of the Prime Minister. I don't know if he was called the Prime Minister of the... Oh, it was just the Mayor of London, sorry. He stayed behind, but he had a big fucking glass room built for him. So he was like in this fully isolated chamber
Oh, wow.
and would have people come in for meetings every day through his chamber. So he actually survived. Heaps of other rich fucks just fled the city and stayed in their country towns.
Less contact.
Yep, the poor people couldn't afford to do that. There's only one documented
they've gotta
case.
work.
There's only one documented case of a peasant family being allowed
Oh, my God.
out. So this one really was, they fucked up the poor. But they had a few interesting things like the quarantine for 40 days, like I was mentioning.
Yeah.
They also they got to the point where they wouldn't accept cash anymore. So they were making sterilise your cash, wash your cash before it was handed over, which is... So even though they believe that at its time, this is 300 years after the first one, they still think it's these miasmas that are causing it. But they seem to have a bit of an understanding that it's going to transfer from person to person in some way. And sadly, there was a guy around at the time that started pioneering fumigation, and he managed to convince London to start fires to basically burn out the fucking city. So I think it was every 3 houses, they had to get together and they had to start a big, large fire in the middle of the 3 houses, and they had to do that all the way around London. And they did that for 3 days, and they were trying to fumigate the city, and then it fucking rained and put the fires out. And like I was listening, I can't remember what university she was from, but I was watching an interview of a lady, and she thinks that the smell from the fire and the foam would have actually got rid of the rats.
Holy shit.
So another fucked up thing that happened in the 1655 one was that they started... I can't remember if they blamed cats and dogs or if they just fucking decided they didn't like them. But anyway, they
kill cats and dogs.
started killing cats and dogs by the thousands. So every cat and dog that they'd find, they'd fucking kill it. And that actually was worse for them because cats and dogs were getting rid of the rats.
Getting rid of the rats.
So these fuckers are
Wow.
like basically being invited into the city with a free pass.
Holy shit.
So that one was
there's
brutal.
no natural predator for the rats, and they just multiply
yeah.
rabbits.
Yep. So that one was brutal, and it only took place over that 1 year and took out 2 million over Europe, 100,000 in London.
Shit.
And they think
such a huge amount of
it's
life
crazy.
lost.
That's a crazy number.
and they think it was just the winter that killed that one. Nothing else. Just it got too cold. So that one, ended luckily because that one
So
was
there's no
like,
herd
really rapid.
immunity or anything. It's just going away.
No, so that's actually an interesting thing. So when it started going away, there was lots of people that were surviving in the city. Word got out to all the rich people that had gone to the country that you can come back in, and then some were coming back in and getting sick straight away.
Yeah.
So it did appear as though people had developed a bit of an
herd
immunity. Yeah.
Unless you weren't a part of the herd.
In 1855, there was another plague, the third major plague. So there was one in the 18th century that killed 600,000 people. This motherfucker killed 12 million people.
12 million.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's
These are massive numbers.
6 times worse than the 1655 one, but way less than the 1347 one, which was 200 million.
Jesus.
So it's just insane numbers. And interestingly enough, the bubonic plague is still around, but now we can treat it with antibiotics.
Yeah.
So
Good old antibiotics.
something that killed off half the world's now very, very much so curable, but you still have to get it in time, get treatment in time. If you don't, then
die.
And if you get bubonic and pneumonic plague at the same time, you're still a very high chance of being dead.
Jesus. Yeah.
So anyway, that was a very shallow dive. I've definitely missed out on a bunch of stuff. So if there's any like plague nerds out there, I'm super sorry. But like for the the commoners amongst us, like we didn't know fuck all. So
Yeah, I didn't know any of
Yeah.
this.
No.
Yeah,
I knew
so-
that there was the Black Plague. I didn't know anything more than that.
No, neither did I.
I do want to mention two things. The black plague caused. One was a very famous saying called "Bring out your dead." Have you heard this?
Yes,
No.
So-
I have.
This is just the sheer amount of fucking people dying. They're like, and part of the reason why bodies end up being disposed in the river. Just
Didn't they like ring a bell? Didn't they walk down the streets and ring a bell
Yeah, exactly.
and say, "Bring out your dead"?
So the disposing
would
of all
collect
these
them?
bodies became so hard and so dangerous that they'd pay these guys to do exactly that, and they'd get paid fucking well for it. But they would just come out, bring out your dead, then they'd collect all the bodies on these carts, and then they'd fucking quick them off to the mass graves. Now these mass graves, like they still find them today. So
wow.
there's an area in France, I can't remember the exact location, but they were doing digging to build a railway station, I think it was, and they found a whole bunch of bones from a mass grave
mass
from
grave.
that. And I mean, they found that heaps of times, but this one's special because they think they can actually get some stuff out of these bones, so they can actually confirm
research.
what it was. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Because I mean, they think it was the bubonic plague, like I said, but they're not certain. So that research is still being conducted, I do believe. But yeah, that would be interesting to find out.
My head just cannot get around the number of people
Yeah,
that are
no, it's insane.
dying.
Yeah.
This is what happens when there's no vaccines.
Yeah. So and to put it like so, that's the worst plague that mankind's ever known. Okay, but just to give you a little bit of perspective on this shit that we're going through right now, and this isn't to take away from the hardship and the people that are dying and suffering right now at all, but bubonic plague is the worst one ever with over 200 million kills. Then we have smallpox. That killed 56 million people, including 90% of the native Indian population.
Wow.
Oh, that's horrific.
So obviously,
Yeah.
you know, the Europeans coming into America wasn't great for them.
As
but
usual, white man.
they brought the smallpox.
I know that
was
they
the-
White man
did,
bringing
yeah.
disease.
I knew they brought smallpox, but I did not know that it wiped out that many of them.
And the smallpox hit Europe again in the 1800s and killed about 400,000 people. And this is when that seems very early, but anyway, this chart I got here says the first ever vaccine was created to ward off smallpox. So I don't know if that happened during that epidemic of the 1800s, but yeah, that was what the first vaccine was created for, was smallpox. Then,
Was that the guy that injected his own
son.
son
Yes.
to
Yes, it
prove
was.
to everyone
Oh, actually, it
that
might
it
not have been a
worked?
small, because that was a recent one. Actually, it could have been, yeah. Could have been.
Because he developed
that
a
definitely
vaccine
happened,
for it, and
yeah.
everyone's like, "Yeah, whatever." And he was like, "Look, I will publicly inject my own son with it."
You'd want to be
Because
pretty confident taking that
Yeah,
risk,
well,
wouldn't
that
you?
was to prove how confident he was in his vaccine. He was like, "Look, I'm gonna do this to the one person I love the most," and it worked. I'm pretty sure. Like, don't quote me on it, but I'm pretty sure that's the story.
Now, we had a lot of ancient plagues that killed a lot of people too. So in 541 to 542, an estimated 30 to 50 million people died in the plague of Justinian. There's also the Japanese smallpox epidemic, which took place in 735 and 730 to 737, which killed 1 million people. Now, basically, the point is that viruses are very common. They've been around forever, and the trend of them is every 10 years. Now, it might not feel like that's been happening to us now, but so here's from the last 100 years, okay? 1989 to 1918 to 1919, the Spanish flu. That fucker killed 40 to 50 million people. That's the third worst plague we've ever experienced, and that happened 100 years ago. So
Yeah, that's really not long in the scheme.
Not
of
long
things.
at all.
no, and not even. Yeah,
And that's the
my
only
grandma, my great grandma was alive during
Oh,
that.
wow.
Yeah,
That's the only plague that most people really know about.
Well, since then,
as well.
Yeah, because it's pretty
Recent.
recent.
so in 1889, so this is a little bit further back from that, but not too much further, was the Russian flu. That killed 1 million people. In 1957 to 1958, there was the Asian flu, which killed 1.1 million people.
Is this worldwide? Sorry, these numbers.
Well, see, these ones were really localized, so the Asian flu took place in... There's the Hong Kong flu that killed 1 million people from 1968 to 1970. And then you got the ones that, everyone's talking about recently, which is like the swine flu, which killed 200,000 people.
Yeah.
Ebola killed 11,000. SARS killed 770, and obviously the coronavirus is still ongoing.
And
So-
Ebola is still, like, in certain regions, isn't that still an ongoing
Is that South
threat?
Africa that originated from?
Not
Ebola?
it
Am
was
I
somewhere in
thinking of something
Africa.
else?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know the
But
exact.
Ebola
region.
is still happening, isn't it?
Well, Ebola is something that they think might have. That's one of the things that they think if it wasn't the bubonic plague that caused the Black Plague, it might have been an Ebola type virus that did it.
okay.
Another thing is that it could have been anthrax being spread. Like there's a few.
Oh,
different,
really?
Because they all evolve over time anyway, don't they?
Yeah.
So they can come back, but they might come back differently.
Yep.
So the point is, I've got two main points to make on this. Is one, we're fucking lucky. Like even though there's a massive death toll happening right now, compared to what's happened in just recent times, going like the Hong Kong flu was 50 years ago and 1 million people died from that shit.
Yeah.
Like that's 1 million. That's the entire
That's way more
Adelaide.
than what's happening at the moment.
Like
way more.
just to, and they think things like the flu. We haven't even seen the worst of the flu yet. So we should be. This is my main point, and I'm going to have a little rant here. We've had. Okay, so I'm just looking at this chart right now, and I'm sure there was earlier ones, but out of recorded fucking history, in 165 to 180, there was a plague that killed 5 million fucking people. Okay, we've had plagues, wipe motherfuckers out every 10 years for forever. And in that time, what the fuck have we actually learned? Like, our response to this is histories of the fucked. So, as a world, our response to this fucking virus is fucked. Absolutely fucked. Like, we should have learnt a few lessons. And I'm not really talking about, like, the mass population, or I'm talking about the fucking people that are running this shit.
Okay, yeah.
And this is my plea to the people of the mass population to really consider who the fuck's running this stuff, okay? Because this is insane. After all these deaths and all these things, surely you would figure out by now, when you see a highly contagious new disease begin to spread, you fucking lock shit down.
Immediately.
Like, you don't fuck around.
Yeah, don't fuck around.
And
yeah.
the
Don't give it
response,
time.
the response has been disgusting. Just like the leaders...
And so varied.
Yeah. But just like the leaders in 1665, where they were fucking fleeing to the fucking country for their own ass, these people are doing this a similar but different thing where they're not making a decision just so they can't be seen to make the wrong decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These people have put out false information after bits of shit. Our government are clearly running off their own agenda and worried about the economy and have made us all, put us at risk. I think it's really fucking bad. Like, I think that we need to consider how we run this stuff. Now, like, the medical administrators, like the World Health Organization, have been fucking disgraceful. The medical community have been fucking amazing. Like, these are the ones that are out on the front line actually taking people on
Yeah.
and helping them. And, like, they are incredible. And they're the people, them and people that are in charge of understand infectious disease and how it spreads. They're the people I want to be hearing
Yeah,
from.
they're the people
Absolutely.
you want to
They-
listen to.
why-
They know what they're talking
Not the
about.
people getting paid.
No, screw
Yeah.
the government and
To-
their personal interests
Yeah.
in economy and, oh my God, how are we going to recover this? Money, money, money.
Yeah.
It's like, no, let's listen to the people who actually know what the fuck they're talking about and do what they say.
What we've seen from this, like, is that our entire veneer of fucking security and power and authority can crumble if the whole world gets a fucking sniffle. Like, it's a severe sniffle, but it's a fucking sniffle, and all of our major structures crumbled. Like,
Big time.
do we really want to be relying on a fucking system like that.
No.
Yeah.
All right, like
Yeah.
seriously, it's bullshit. But this leads me to the second part of my rant. Okay. All right, now bear
How
with
many
me.
parts
That
of
was only
this
the
rant
first?
Yeah.
are there?
So
Well, we got serious face on too.
out of
You
this,
pissed him off now. It's ready to go.
what really fucking pisses me off, all right, I am, if you went on
Things
a,
that grind my gears.
if you went on a left and right political spectrum, right, I'm left, okay? But the left has fucking disappointed me beyond belief. Like, take your conspiracy theories and shove them up your fucking ass, all right? Even if they're true, okay? Even if this fucking virus came from some fucking plant in fucking China, what the fuck difference does it make, okay? The difference between the left and the right, and the reason why I think when we get out of this over the next 5 years, the right are going to take over and they are going to monopolize business and they are going to do all these things that the conspiracy theorists say, oh, they fucking made this happen. No, they're just fucking taking advantage of a situation. These cunts are proactive. Like, and I really hate the fact that it's the other side that are fucking
That's
proactive.
doing everything.
They're actually planning. They see that right now there's a clean slate
Here's
to
an
fucking create
opportunity.
shit.
Yeah.
We're going,
Definitely.
the left side are going fucking 5G, fucking rah, rah,
Yeah.
rah. Like, shut the fuck
Don't
up
even.
and figure out a fucking plan for making this world a better place.
Exactly right.
So,
Now's your opportunity.
yeah, absolutely. Stand up. Don't fucking listen to these leaders. Right, and now this is just ridiculous and everyone's going to think I'm an idiot, but I have a fucking answer.
Oh,
Let me sit
no.
up straight for
I
this
haven't
answer.
heard this answer. Oh my
Right.
god.
Right, so
Okay, we're ready.
Oh,
I think the
shit.
most evil fucking thing in the world is money, but it's going to be a long time before people even like. You can't even talk about getting rid of money without people going, you're a fucking communist, Russia, fucking China, rah, rah, rah. So fucking don't worry about the
Oh
money.
yeah, don't threaten to take people's money
Right.
away. They won't know what to do
But-
with themselves.
But government, okay? Fuck the government.
Oh, dear.
All right? Fuck the way it's set
We're
up.
about to get raided.
Fuck
God.
who we are fucking listening to, like who's giving us advice. Like I'm from the mental health field, which you probably wouldn't believe by the way I talk and abuse cunts, but they fucking deserve it, so fuck them. But I deeply care about people. And the fuckers that are in charge of our industry and our service don't even fucking understand how to fucking therapeutically support a fucking mushroom. Like they're fucking useless wankers that have no idea. And this is the same throughout the fucking industry. And you're both looking at me like I'm nuts. But
No, I don't think you're nuts. You're an intense person,
What I
and I
think-
know that where you're coming from is from a good and educated
absolutely
place,
a loving
and
place.
I totally understand that. Yes, you are an intense person.
So what we need
But
to
I totally agree with you, and the way the governments differ on their opinion just shows that they're all pulling it straight out of their ass and hoping for the best.
if you're anyone that like believes in social justice and wants like the right thing for people, then you're probably similar to me and always wanted a revolution without the blood and the ridiculousness, just a better fucking world. Like, so you might not call it a revolution, but you envisage whatever that
Envisage.
Envisage.
a better world. And I think this is our opportunity to actually take that. And I don't think it's going to happen straight away. I think the right will take over, but people on the left, forever now, we have an argument to fall back on. So let them monopolize the system for. Well, try not to let them, but if they do, they will fall apart because their fucking veneer of power is just falling away. Like it's fucking useless. We always can just bring back your whole system crumbled in 2 weeks. Like no powerful system is that weak. Like it's just your system is shit. So I think over the next 20, 30 years, smarter people than I are going to sit around and fucking figure out a better way moving forward where we're not stuck in the same shit as we were doing in 1655. And just lastly, government, I believe in democracy, but I think the way we're voting is incorrect. People are too easily manipulated just by the way the media is set up and by different agendas and all the misinformation. It's fucking impossible to know who the fuck's what. I seriously don't think we should just be voting for these cunts and then a prime minister gets in and then puts in the cabinet, Joe Bloggs is fucking minister for the environment and fucking Jane Bloggs is minister for fucking youth. Like, it's bullshit. I think every single person should have the right to vote, but you should be voting for your field. So I'm in the social services field. I should be voting, and all my other peers should be voting for who's leading the social fucking services field. Unemployed people should be voting for the unemployed minister. Like, people that fucking know what they're talking about should be voting for the best in their business that are willing to go in and fight for that sector's rights. That way you're not going to have as much corruption, and you're going to have people giving a fair fucking say. And in times like this, when an epidemic hits, a pandemic hits the world, we can first turn to our medical people and go, what do? Oh, you want us to quarantine? Okay, no worries. Let's turn to the army. I hate the army for its violence, but it would serve a purpose in this. And ask them, how the fuck do we lock this down? How do we distribute all the goods to everyone so that not everyone's going to get contaminated and there's not people fucking stealing toilet paper like crazy pricks from the shops?
Getting mugged in
Like,
the car park with your fucking toilet paper.
Actual leadership in their realm. Like, not fucking...
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I like that.
I totally agree with you. I mean, the way you come across is always a little bit aggressive, but if you look beyond
fight you.
that,
Passion.
if you look beyond that, I totally agree with you. Why should we have people in power who have no fucking idea what they're talking about, depending on what they're talking
All
about?
they've studied is how to lie and evade questions.
Exactly, and we all
They
know
don't
this
know
about
their fucking
politicians, and
industry.
that's why we hate them. But yeah, okay. It's
So
safe
anyway.
to say we're all lefties, and we're all for people, and we're all for
Absolutely.
all types of people,
people.
not just one type.
But get your shit together, left. Like, stop fucking, oh, it's conspiracy theories. And, like, in a few months' time, when the right do start taking over, don't go, oh, it was planned. They're just fucking more proactive than you, and they're actually taking advantage.
I do hope that at the end of this, the world becomes a better place.
Regardless of what happens to humans, the planet has won out of this.
Oh, 100%.
Oh, yeah.
100%.
And
I
that's
love
that's the
seeing
real thing.
that.
That's the real beauty of it.
Is
Like,
this
love
our
seeing
reset?
that.
This is our reset.
Yeah.
Let's just reset it right.
Yeah.
And
Watching
Bloody hell.
nature
And not go back
just
to the
like
same.
Let's have, like, a-
revitalise
Evolve and
itself is
develop.
amazing.
we should have a day or two every year where the whole world self-isolates and just
Well,
gives the
Earth
planet
Day.
a chance to
Time
breathe.
to breathe.
Proper
I
fucking
think
Earth Day.
Earth Day is supposed to be
ISO
that,
Earth Day.
but I think it should be like ISO
Needs to be
Earth
more.
Month.
Yeah.
Or take a week of isolation.
Yeah,
spend time
absolutely.
with your family. Slow down from work.
Yeah, I mean
That's
if
what
you-
we've got to take the positives out of this situation.
And
Yeah.
if you're hurting, if you are suffering, going through hardship, there are a lot of programs out there that can provide you with mental health assistance as well as financial assistance. So look into. I'll put it up a few really handy links on the show notes for this, at least for our Australian viewers, listeners. That are, if you are struggling, we don't mean to diminish your struggle because it's horrible and it's really hard what everyone's going through. I just think. You know, we've been through a lot as a world and we didn't learn properly and quickly enough. We need to learn from this and we have a real opportunity to make it better.
We
So,
should-
Yeah.
put up links for anyone who's in isolation at the moment, but maybe experiencing domestic violence or
yeah.
if we're not all in a Netflix and chill environment at the
No.
moment. Some
No.
people are really, really struggling with isolation. So you definitely have to feel for those people because it's not as simple as it is for a lot of us. Like a lot of us have to whinge about the fact that we can't go and hang out or go on holidays or anything like that. But for a lot of people, it is a living hell. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But
Have to
stay in
feel
contact
safe.
with people, video chat, family.
Yep.
Go for drive-bys past people's houses and give them a toot and a wave from the car. Stay connected. Stay connected.
Absolutely. Fucking oath.
It's all about mental health at this point. Do what you
Yep.
got to do to keep
To
yourself,
keep yourself
happy.
sane.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I reckon we're about done there.
I reckon. Thank you for that, Cameron.
Oh, no worries. I'm sure everyone
that was
appreciates
really
it.
good.
Tell you what, I'm going to have to get the compressor in action on this audio of all that yelling. If I can bring it down a bit.
Yelling. Yell.
Well, I sort of ranted a bit.
Your rants, God. Can that be the last ranty one for a while? You got a few more up your fucking sleeve, I'm sure.
Hey, look. Sometimes
I
it's
think
gotta-
someone's tired.
Yeah.
That's all right. But next time we just stick with a good old murder mystery or something. Okay? Yeah.
I've got some crazy ones coming up.
Oh fuck. Oh god.
I got like real weird shit, like but true shit.
Yeah, well,
Oh,
that's good. That's what we
God.
want.
I know,
Everything
yeah.
fucked.
Right. So if you guys like want our audio to improve and you're liking the show, become a
Patreon.
yeah, I never remember that fucking word, hey. But do it.
Patreon.
It's $3 or $5, depending on what your level of fuckedness that you want to join.
What are our levels of fucked?
So I think it's pretty fucked and officially fucked. So pretty
Okay.
fucked is $3. Officially fucked is $5.
Fucked,
Because when we're
well-
saying the first person to join gets a free Team Fuck t-shirt.
Yeah, and then we will create a team fuck tier.
There you go. First person to join gets a free Team Fucked t-shirt.
We're like really professional at these endings, hey, look.
So you can join Team Fucked because who the fuck doesn't want to be part of Team Fucked?
We're
Because
all a
let's
little bit
face
fucked.
it,
Yeah, that's it.
Everything.
If you're
is fucked.
fucked, come join us.
If you like to live the negative life, join Team
No,
Fucked.
no, it's not negative.
We're not
We're
negative.
positive.
We're not negative.
I
I'm
am.
actually very positive about this whole situation. I think this will lead to a better world.
You're a positive ranter. I'm just a negative.
You're a
person in
positive
general.
fucker, Cameron.
That's right. Just fuck the government and fuck Pell. Oh,
Yeah,
no, that was the
Cameron-
last podcast, wasn't it?
No, Cameron is an exceptionally positive person, but he has. What do people call you when you rant? They go, "Oh no, you're just
Passionate.
passionate."
Passionate.
That's right. He is exceptionally passionate, and I am often on the receiving end of
Stand
that
up
passion.
for your right.
Oh, hang on. What kind of a
Not that
podcast is this
kind of
going into
passion.
now?
The ranty passion.
All right. I think we got there. We managed to actually finish on a slightly happy note.
We're done.
Yeah. Fuck.
Pajama time.
No.
Pajama time.
Okay.
Stephen.
Didn't you say that at the end of last week too?
Pajama time.
Yeah.
It's always
It's always
It's
pajama,
always pajama time.
Sasha gets home and just chucks her pajama.
I
It
think
doesn't
most
matter.
people do.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
care if it's 11 o'clock
No.
in the morning.
If
If,
you're
I've
done-
been out running errands
Yeah.
and I walk home and,
And you're done for the day. You know you're done.
yeah, those shoes come off,
Bras off.
bras off,
And jammers are on.
pajamas are on,
100% with you there,
glass
sister.
of wine, Netflix.
Maybe not at 11 o'clock.
Not a stereotype at all.